Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right in today because we've got a truly chilling story to dissect. We're going to break down the anatomy of what's known as an isolation haunting, specifically the infamous Eden Hill incident. We'll track exactly how an incredibly mundane scenario, just a typical late-night study session, devolved into pure, unadulterated psychological terror. We're going to look at the timeline, the environment, and the deeply tragic lore that actually fuels this fascinating source material.
So think about this for a second. Have you ever stayed late in a familiar place only to suddenly realize that you are completely, utterly alone? I mean, we've all crammed for exams, right? You get completely in the zone, the hours just slip by. But we're going to dive into how this narrator's super familiar school environment suddenly morphed into a literal trap. It's a shift that triggers our absolute deepest primal fears. It's that terrifying exact moment when the comfort of a quiet room suddenly flips into this horrifying sense of vulnerability.
Section 1. Isolated at Eden Hill. To really understand this, we have to analyze the timeline that methodically stripped away the narrator's sense of safety. So, it's exam season. The school library is kept open until midnight. At 6 p.m., the student arrives. They're focused, they're feeling totally secure. Fast forward to 8 p.m., their normal departure time. There are still a few students lingering around, so it's quiet, but, it's populated. But by 10 p.m., absolute dead silence. The student was so lost in their work, they didn't even notice that the protective bubble of human presence had entirely vanished.
And then, that suffocating silence is broken. Just as the student realizes, hey, I should probably hit home, they hear it. A very distinct limping sound. Just a simple, irregular footstep echoing down a completely empty library aisle. That single auditory cue is absolutely enough to shatter any focus. It immediately prompts a student to hastily pack up their bags and just bolt toward the exit.
Section 2. The corridor and street.
Let's track this physical escape route, which, horrifyingly, offered zero actual escape. Fleeing the library, the student has to walk down this really long, pitch-dark school corridor, and right at the end of it, just before the turn to the exit, they experience a phantom sighting. There is a woman just standing there. As the student gets closer, this profound, heavy feeling of discomfort starts building. It gets so intense they actually call out, "Who's there?" And instantly, the woman vanishes. Gone. The student breathes this massive sigh of relief and pushes through the front doors. It perfectly illustrates how being isolated fundamentally alters our psychological baseline, right? It heightens our paranoia until our minds literally start playing tricks on us. But actually, scratch that. Their ordeal was just beginning.
Stepping outside, the uncanny environment they walk into is just wild. On normal nights, this exact street is bustling. People are out walking, even late. But on this specific night, it is strangely, completely empty. It's the terrifying realization that a normally safe populated space has just been unnaturally voided of human life. So, exhausted, hungry, and already on edge, the student is forced to walk home in total eerie isolation.
Section 3. The Twisted Encounter.
Now, the really crucial point here is that the true terror didn't actually happen inside the creepy, dark school building. It happened right out in the open. The student is almost home. They're looking down at the pavement, just driven by sheer panic and exhaustion. And suddenly, they notice a shadow stretching out toward them on the ground. Just imagine the visceral shock of seeing a shadow cast right behind you when you know for a fact the street is entirely abandoned. Slowly, the student lifts their head to see what is casting it.
Looking up, they inadvertently catch up to this slow-moving figure. And the physical details here are just horrifying. We're talking tattered, dirty clothes, a messy head of hair, and hands and feet that are unnaturally, severely twisted. She has a limping, agonizing walk, which instantly connects right back to that terrifying sound from the library. This triggers an overwhelming primal gut instinct. Do not take another step. Every cell in their body is screaming at them to freeze.
Confronted by this entity, the student goes through a classic, multi-step psychological breakdown. Step 1. Total shock. They are frozen solid, unable to utter a single word. Step 2. Their brain just completely goes numb as the entity mumbles a strange question, something the student can't even process. Step 3. Pure, desperate panic. In a totally irrational move, the student just points their arm far, far away into the distance, basically just praying it makes her leave. And astonishingly, she complies. She turns and limps away toward the exact spot they pointed to, eventually disappearing from sight.
As soon as she's gone, the student realizes she could reappear at any second. So they run. They run as fast as humanly possible, just desperately looking for a car, a person, literally anyone to help. And then, the absolute climax of this whole ordeal hits. Echoing from far away down the empty streets, the student hears that same woman screaming this absolutely blood-curdling phrase, "She is here." The sheer, overwhelming terror of that scream is the ultimate breaking point. The narrator completely blacks out right there on the pavement.
Section 4. The Ghost of Agatha.
Okay, so the narrator passes out but is thankfully found and rescued by a local neighbor, and it's the conversation with that neighbor the next day that fundamentally shifts how we understand this whole encounter. The roots of this haunting trace back to a very specific tragedy at Eden Hill School in the year 1998. This wasn't just some random monster on the street. This entity has a history deeply tragically anchored to the very school grounds the student was studying on.
Back in 1998, there was a 32-year-old woman named Agatha. She was a mother, and her life was entirely shattered by an event that took place at Eden Hill School. The trauma of it essentially locked her spirit into the surrounding area in a perpetual state of agony.
And the tragedy centers around the number 10. That was the age of her beloved daughter. Tragically, her 10-year-old daughter died in a terrible accident while playing with her friends right there on the school grounds. Agatha simply couldn't bear the excruciating reality of losing her child.
When we actually connect the dots on this, it's pretty profound and totally heartbreaking. The terrifying entity, the limping woman with the twisted limbs, is Agatha's ghost, endlessly roaming the school and the streets around it. And that horrifying, blood-curdling scream of "she is here," that's not a threat. It's the heart-wrenching reality of a mother's eternal, desperate search, thinking she finally found her lost child. We can clearly see how her unbearable grief didn't just fade away over time. Trauma anchors itself to physical locations. It transformed into a restless spirit, wandering the dark streets near Eden Hill, just hoping to be reunited with her daughter.
Understanding how raw, tragic grief fuels these enduring urban legends really changes your perspective, doesn't it? It's not just about a jump scare, it's about lasting trauma. And it leaves us with a pretty chilling thought to wrap up on. The next time you leave a familiar place late at night and you're walking down a strangely quiet street listening to the echoes of your own footsteps, are you truly alone? Or is someone wandering right behind you in the dark? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, stay safe out there.